This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here, and welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat program. Really excited to come to you and talk some spring football. Second segment, we're going to talk to the Georgia softball coach. They have a national championship caliber roster. Big week ahead for them. And then our hot and cold segment at the end of the week. But let's start out with Georgia football. Starts on Tuesday, first spring practice. Obviously, 15 sessions. Kirby Smart and his staff going to try to make the most of them. And obviously, they have questions to answer. And so I'm going to start right at the top. I think the Georgia running game this year has to take the next step. And I say that aware that last year's run game I thought was adequate as maybe it should have been when you considered that they had a guy like Brock Bowers as option number one, and they had an explosive receiver like Ladd McConkey, and they were dealing with injuries with Dejon Edwards, dealing with a knee sprain until halfway through the year, missed the first two games, was still injured halfway through the year. Kendall Milton had the injury issues at the beginning of the year. Branson Robinson was out last year. Andrew Paul was coming back. I mean, it was kind of a beat up room, and it kind of felt like the Georgia run game had to nurse their way through the season. Not as dynamic as it's been. Didn't see the backs as involved in the pass game as we'd seen in the past, and really didn't have an explosive element like you'd like to see out of a Georgia run game. And truly, I felt like the last great all-around back that Georgia had was DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre was also the last Georgia running back to make first or second team. In 2020, in 2021, in 2022, 2023, there's been 18 different slots where SEC players have been first team or second team running back. None of them wore the G. I think that changes this year. And I've been saying it for a long time. And, now ESPN's coming in, from behind in 10,000 feet saying, that Etienne's a great player. Well, yeah, where you been? You missed the party. They didn't hype him up when he transferred. It was all about other schools. Now ESPN come to the table saying that Etienne expected to be the best back in the SEC. I've said on record on the SEC network, I think he's going to have a 1,000-yard season. But I think you need more. And the reason you need more is because of the way you have to manage your team with this long of a season. It can't be Etienne with 20 touches in September in every game. And we've seen Kirby Smart do a really good job managing his running backs before. And I go back to the 2022 season where we didn't see a lot of Kenny McIntosh at the beginning of the year. We saw Kenny carry it more towards the end of the year. He had to get Kenny McIntosh to the finish line late into the season. I think you saw him manage James Cook somewhat like that as well. You've got to get your team to the playoff healthy. And you've also got to win every game, right? So it's kind of a mix. And so early on, when you play some of the lesser teams, although this year's schedule not as conducive to that as last year's, Kirby's going to have to bring some guys along. And that's where you wonder, not about Etienne, because I think Etienne is a rock star. And I think he's going to run it, and I think he's going to catch it, and I think he's going to be dynamic. But how much can Andrew Paul do early? Where will Branson Robinson be in his recovery from knee injury? I'm not sure you circle Branson Robinson as a guy that's ready for the start of the year. Roderick Robinson, yes, 240. What does he bring? How much can Nate Frazier do as a freshman? How involved is Cash Jones still? I look at this running backs room as a real key. And the reason I say it's a real key is because I don't have the same level of conviction in the receivers or the tight ends room. Now, it's a loaded tight ends room. And I feel better about the tight ends room than I do the receivers room. But Brock Bowers isn't there anymore to catch that ball thrown 3 feet over his head, thrown behind him, or to take an easy 6-yard route and turn it into 80. So your quarterback's numbers have been inflated because of Brock's ability to make difficult catches on balls that weren't necessarily thrown well, or to run away from defenses, or to take over in the fourth quarter as he did against Auburn after some struggles in the passing game for the first 3 quarters. I think Carson Beck's going to have a lot more on his shoulders because I'm not convinced that this receiving core is elite. I think it's good, but I don't know that I think it's great. Now, I could be wrong, and these transfers will have everything to do with that. And so that's my second question. So my first question is, how involved can you get the run game, and where's your depth going to come from? Where's Andrew Paul? Where's Branson Robinson in his recovery? Rod Robinson, how effective can the 240-pounder be? He looked awful good against Florida State. Could it be Nate Frazier coming in as an impact guy? I'm excited about the Georgia running backs room. To me, that's a big plus. That's something that I think is going to bring another element. It's something I think Mike Bobo is really, really good at involving in his offenses. When you look at the highest scoring team in Georgia history, okay, it was 2014 and Mike Bobo offense. They were able to run the ball. Hudson Mason, a quarterback. I'd see this offense being somewhat comparable to that one. Now, Carson is obviously a more talented quarterback than Hudson Mason. I think Hudson would be the first to admit that Carson has those NFL skills. And we'll get to Carson in a second. But I want to go to the receiving group next, because I didn't think that Dominic Lovett was the impact player that maybe some people had hoped he would be in terms of his ability to be explosive. When I looked at his yards per catch at Georgia, it was not what it was at Missouri. At Missouri, he was 15 yards per catch. At Georgia, he was 11. At Missouri, he was 846 yards. At Georgia, he was 613, basically the same amount of catches. Ra Thomas was another guy who did not fare as well at Georgia as he did at Mississippi State. Now, he missed some games with injury. He had some off-field issues. We've said it a million times. Georgia's not for everybody, and it's tough to play at Georgia. Every position. I kind of wash out this whole, it's tough to be a receiver. Look, it's tough to play anywhere at Georgia. But don't tell me it's tough to recruit the position or any position, because it's Georgia. Because you're playing for Kirby Smart, because you're playing for national championships, because you're at a top 20 institution, because you have maybe the greatest college town in the country, because you have an international airport that can get you anywhere in the world on a direct flight. Don't tell me that it's hard to recruit at Georgia. It's not. You have the top recruiting budget in the nation. So I don't want to hear that. This is an area Georgia's got to do better. I think this is an area that there's got to be some heavy lifting done by James Coley. When you take a look at the fact that 5 of the 9 transfers on the Georgia team are playing the receiver position, that's an indictment. Something went wrong there. Okay, that's not the way it's supposed to be. If you've got 5 of your 9 transfers, more than half of the transfers on your team at one position, something was wrong. And we don't need to turn this program into that. But you got a new receivers coach and James Coley, a guy that's been here before, a guy that recruits the position extremely well and can manage kids. So I think you may get an uptick there, but you don't have Ladd McConkey in the receiver ranks. You don't have Adonai Mitchell in the receiver ranks. All of a sudden, when we look back at the Georgia offenses that won the title, my response is, why didn't you score even more? Because I had people telling me, hey, this offense could be Joe Burrow-like. You take a look, and now Ladd McConkey looks like a first-round pick. Adonai Mitchell is a first-round pick. Brock Bowers is a generational talent. You had first-round and top centers and left tackles and running backs that are starting in the NFL, and there were still games you struggled. So you figure it out. I don't think that you have that supporting cast for Carson. I don't. I don't think. Now, that said, talking tight ends, I think Lawson Lucky is going to do amazing things. I saw enough of them in the spring before he got injured last fall to say this guy could be special. This is a guy they move around like Brock Bowers. I don't think he's going to be Brock Bowers, but I think he's going to be an impact guy. I'm interested to see this Stanford tight end transfer. About the same size as Bowers, 6'3", 6'4", 240. Different level of competition in the SEC than Stanford in the Pac-12. A lot of highlights from Hawaii when you look at this guy. You're not playing Hawaii, okay? You're playing Clemson. You're playing Ole Miss. You're playing at Alabama. You're playing at Texas. Can Urasek be an effective player against elite competition, right? I know he's an NFL prospect, but I don't know that he's seen this level. And we're going to find out because he's going to see it every day in practice. That's the great part about Georgia is when you play against elite players, Kirby's going to find out about these guys real fast. We don't got to wait till they play Clemson. The coaches are going to know, about 10 practices into spring who their guys are. They're going to have a really good idea. There's going to be competition because there's more than one guy, right? But they're going to separate. And they're going to know about 10. They're going to know what London Humphreys can do, right? They're going to find out if this guy's more than just a straight line speed guy or how he can acclimate to the physicalness of Georgia practice. He's a young guy, but that doesn't necessarily mean he makes the cut. They're going to know if Kobe Young from Miami can translate into being a starter at the X and being an elite guy. Or is he a matchup guy? Is he a red zone guy? Is he a slot? They're going to sort all that out. And I don't know that they're necessarily going to tell us what's going on or let us see enough where we know. And certainly they're not going to give you a preview at G-Day. But they're going to separate and answer these questions. Look, we know Oscar Delp can produce. We know he's good. But they're going to find out about this Riddell kid, this incoming tight end with all this talent. We're going to find out where Pierce Sperling is at. He's had that injury early on in his career. Saw a little bit of him last year. They're going to sort out that tight end room. How dynamic can the tight ends be? And that's an important question to answer because when I look at this Georgia offense, and you've heard me talk about the running backs, and I think Etienne is absolutely a home run hitter. I know Nate Frazier was a 10-500 guy in high school, but how quickly can the freshman learn? I know Andrew Paul showed some good things before the injury, but where is he at? The thing that seems to be missing is that explosive element. Brock Bowers was an explosive player. You don't think about tight ends being explosive players, but he was explosive. Ladd McConkey, obviously, an explosive player. The year before, Adonai Mitchell, explosive player, right? Who's that guy? Now, I know Aaron Smith can run by people, and he actually ran by some Alabama guys, and Carson underthrew him and ended up being 3 instead of 7. But can Aaron Smith be an every down guy? I know he's gotten better and better and better. I know he's not the track guy playing football. He's a football guy that can run track if he wants. But Aaron Smith is a guy, I wonder, like, can this guy become a regular? Can he be a 50-catch guy? Or is what did Munkin say? He was a role, he had a role or a part-time. I forget how Coach Munkin, it was 2 years ago. This is 2 more years in for Aaron Smith. Healthier, good off season. You know, to me, if this guy comes to fruition, he could be a pivotal player. But if he's a part-time guy, I don't know. I don't know that it helps you as much. And so I'm looking for that explosive element in your receiving core. I did see some good things from Anthony Evans late last year. Is he going to be ready to be an every down player, right? So we'll take a look and see how those transfers do at the receiver. But on paper, this wide receiver position does not wow me. This does not. I do not look at this and go, oh wow, this is one of the top 10 receiver units in the country. I don't see that. I could be wrong, but I don't see this. Now, is it good enough to win a championship with? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think the offensive line is really strong, but I need to find out. And one of my questions is, where is the explosive element in the pass game? Is it out of the tight end ranks? Is it out of the receiver ranks? I'm just not sure. And then my third offensive question this spring is Carson Beck. And Carson showed us a great NFL arm last year. He showed us some talent, but the offseason's been interesting. And it's not just at Georgia, it's everywhere where NIL has become prominent, where guys are getting big NIL packages. Now, it's not like the NFL where it's disclosed and they could say, oh, so-and-so signed a package worth $4 million. It's talked about, it's discussed, it's sourced. I've reported on it. And now you're starting to see some of that, right? If you look at your quarterback's Instagram and he's got a picture of his Lamborghini steering wheel and his private jet that he's on and whatever, a watch that looks like it's got diamonds on it. And it looks like a lot of spending, a lot of look at me, a lot of flash. And that's exciting for young people. And it's certainly not unique to Carson Beck. I mean, I see doing that. At the college level, where not everybody is making NIL money, I'm not sure how that affects the locker room. I'm not sure how that affects the leadership. You might say it may not matter. You might say, well, who cares? Nobody cares. Everybody's cool with it. Maybe they are. But I've talked to people that know players that aren't. And Kirby Smart works really hard to keep that locker room in check. And I think Carson could help himself if he had an awareness, a self-awareness of me, how that might come across to people. I'll give you an example. Talking to some donors the other day. These are guys that give millions of dollars. Why are they giving, and the concept of giving money to Georgia to pay players is nothing new anywhere. But when you're seeing the player spend what they consider frivolously, are you giving that money, that generational wealth, to a football player so they can buy a Lamborghini or fly in a private jet or buy a diamond watch? For a college player, for some of those traditional boosters, that's a tough connect. That's you could give that money to your family, your future or your current grandchildren or great grandchildren, or you can give that money to the school for the football team to be good. And they want the football team to be good. But when they see the money being spent like that, it makes it tougher and it challenges the booster model. And it's not just at Georgia. This is everywhere. Okay. So this is an everywhere thing with NIL and with collectives. And there's no rule book for it. This is something that's got to be managed as you go along. And some coaches are able to manage it better than others. And the good news for Georgia is that Georgia has Kirby Smart, who's better at managing today's game than any coach in the country. Kirby is the master of roster management, and that covers a lot of ground. That doesn't just cover player development and explaining to kids that you don't have to start as a freshman or even play as a freshman. I mean, Kirby's got the proof. He's not selling dreams. He's selling results. He's got a guy in Trayvon Walker, wasn't even all SEC, and the guy's #1 overall pick. He's taken a guy like Jordan Davis and Ladd McConkey and Eric Stokes, these 3-star prospects, and he's turned them into first-round draft picks in his program. So this is a guy that sells results. This is a guy who can sit down across from a player and say, do it my way, and it's going to work. And I just think that this is something Kirby will manage. He'll manage that locker room. At some point, the conversation will be had with players and great amounts of NIL money and how to have a self-awareness in the interest of team harmony and in the interest of program identity. It's hard for Kirby to say eat off the floor when guys are driving Lamborghinis and eating lobster every day. Let's be honest about it. It doesn't all go together. And believe me, if there's one thing that Kirby Smart's teams are going to maintain, it's a blue-collar mentality, because that's what he's all about. And it's going to be his way. And if it's not, you're going to see it. And we've seen it before when Kirby's had issues. He handles them internally, but every now and then you've seen him spill over on the field. I don't think it's going to get to that point with any players on this team. I think this is something that by the end of the spring will be rectified. I think this locker room is going to be in order, but I think there's got to be some growing. I think there's got to be some awareness. And then beyond that, when we talk about Carson back, I think he's got to get a chemistry with these receivers. You're asking Carson to do some heavy lifting, okay? You're asking him, like I said, 5 incoming transfer wide receivers and an incoming tight end and an incoming. This is a lot of new people that Carson has to get to know and has to make better, right? The best quarterbacks make the players on the team around them better. How does Carson do that? Where's the extra work? Where is the extra film study? What is the relationship like? Those are things that matter. And players have got to love their quarterback for the team to be at their best, I believe. I really believe that. I think that there's a lot to be said for chemistry and guys wanting to play for the quarterback and vice versa. The quarterback, is got to serve his players and get those guys the ball and spend that extra time with all these receivers and make sure they understand the offense, because Georgia plays a pro-style offense. Part of the reason why Georgia is so good and part of the reason why Carson Beck is so good is because Carson really flies the jet at the line of scrimmage, right? And here's what I mean by that. Some programs, the quarterback go and fill in the blanks, and this is going to be even more important now that they've got this headset communication. Some programs go to the line of scrimmage and and wait for the team to line up, and the quarterback looks to the sideline and the coach signals everything in, right? Georgia, the quarterback already knows the adjustments based on what he gets. He goes to the line, he sees what he's got. And listen, that checklist of what Carson can do, when I talk about him flying the jet, I'm not talking about the spring break jet. I'm talking about flying the jet on the field. There's a reason why this cat's getting all this money. He's an NFL quarterback. You've got an NFL quarterback playing for Georgia this year in Carson Beck. He goes to the line. He sets the projections. He makes the adjustments to the protections, whatever blitz pickup, moving his personnel around, changing the play. He's got some pre-prescribed plays in his mind based on the read. He's got to make the right read. He can't be fooled. He's got to be able to make all the throws, which he can. He's got to stay poised. He's got to think on his feet. He's got to know when to break the pocket. He's got to know when to stay in the pocket. I mean, it is an incredibly difficult job. The guy is incredibly valuable to your program. Listen, there's a reason why they picked him over Brock Vandagriff. And that wasn't without much discussion. Brock Vandagriff is a really talented guy and is going to do really good things at Kentucky, right? But Georgia had to make a decision. They chose Carson. And the reason why Kirby said last fall was the experience. And Carson played well enough to keep the job. And that meant losing Brock Vandagriff. So there's a lot riding on this year. There's a lot riding on Carson Beck's shoulders. Carson's got a lot of work to do with a lot of new players, a lot of responsibilities, and a ton of pressure. So that's a question because it's not just a given. It's not easy. Carson Beck does not have an easy job. You could argue that he's got more pressure and a more difficult job than anybody in that building except for Kirby Smart. I mean, I think right now he probably makes more money than everybody in that building but Kirby Smart. I'm not being facetious. I think his package makes him the second most valuable person financially in that football building behind Kirby. So there's a lot on the kid. I say kid, he's a fourth-year guy, young man. And there's questions of how do you handle the pressure? How do you handle it? The expectations are going to be enormous. It's exciting. Georgia's number one preseason. Georgia's the SEC favorite. You look at that Georgia schedule. You talk about playing Clemson. You don't think Matt Luke is going to have Clemson. You don't think Matt Luke is going to tell Clemson all about the Georgia defense, all about how Kirby's defenses work, all the different blitz packages that Georgia can bring. They got Matt Luke. He's going to have Clemson prepared. Does Clemson have good enough personnel? I don't know. Did they have good enough personnel in 2021? It was a 10-3 game. So it's going to be neutral site. Clemson's won 5 in a row. Dabo Swinney's got a chip on the shoulder. Georgia can't overlook that game. Not with all the newness. We haven't even talked about the secondary. I'll save that for week 2. You're reloading that secondary where you're losing 3 NFL guys, and now you see Tyke Smith blowing up, and you're going, wow, maybe this guy was even better than we thought. Well, you think he led the team in tackles and picks. I don't know what we were thinking projecting him as a 5th or 6th rounder. I guess we all thought he'd run slow. Then he runs a 4.4 something. And Javon Bullard and Kamari Lassiter, these are some big shoes to fill. Now, there's a ton of talent in the secondary, but they haven't done it yet, right? We'll get to the defense next week, getting ahead of myself. But talking about Georgia football and talking about expectations and talking about team dynamics gets me excited because it's fascinating to watch how Kirby Smart manages Georgia football and what makes him the best. It doesn't come easy, man. Being at the top, it's harder. It's harder to maintain being at the top than it is to climb. It's harder to handle success than it is to handle adversity, especially when it comes to managing young people. So those are some of my key questions, offensive questions for the spring. Where is the explosive element in the passing game coming from? How does Mike Bobo maximize the run game and make sure that ETN makes it to the postseason healthy for that playoff run? And then how does Carson Beck manage and grow as a leader? Those are the 3 offensive questions for the spring. I'm going to take a short break right now. I want to recognize our sponsor, Ingles. They bring the program to you every Monday night. And we come back, the best hitting coach in the country and one of the best coaches, period. And Tony Baldwin has that Georgia softball program in the top 10, 6-3 against ranked opponents. They got a huge week coming up, Georgia Tech in Athens and Alabama in Athens. We're going to talk to Coach Baldwin about how he's built this program, some of the key players, right after this.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Well, back now, and I'm with Georgia coach Tony Baldwin. Third-year coach, Tony, it's gone by really fast. Hard to believe we're already talking about your third season, but man, I can see the program gaining some big-time momentum. You've been top 10 all year. I think you guys are 6-3 against ranked teams. You have played some serious competition right out of the gate. What's your takeaway as we're getting ready to start the SEC season?
Sure. Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on. And yeah, the goal for this team, we've got a veteran team, we've got 10 seniors, a group of women that have played a lot of softball in the Georgia uniform. And one of the challenges for this group was just to grow stronger in our emotional consistency. And so what we really wanted to do when we put together the schedule is just grow our ability to play under strain. When you get to the postseason and you're playing, great SEC teams, or you're playing, in a regional or super regional, it's not always going to go your way or just be this neat and tidy package where it's a great matchup for you. You're going to have to learn to win. Maybe it's 8-7 game where you just keep finding a way to, get one more run than the other team, or maybe you're going to have to pitch and defend at such a level that you win 2-1. We've been pretty good at the offensive game, and we've really set our sights here over the last couple of years to grow on the pitching and defensive side. And so, we've challenged ourselves on the schedule. We've played really good teams. We've played some of the top offenses. We faced some of the tough pitchers, and we found a way ultimately to be pretty successful. We wore down a little bit, to be honest, on our trip out to Stanford. Just the grind, I don't really like to use that word, because people that are getting up to go work hard jobs, those people are grinding. We're playing softball, so it's not that much of a grind, but the emotional fatigue that came from playing hard game after hard game after hard game, combine that with a long travel trip out to Stanford, I think we wore down a little bit there. But we learned from it. We learned a lesson of what that's like, and kind of some of the warning signs that come with it. And I think we're better today because of our trip out to Stanford. And even though, there was some adversity that we faced, that's what makes you stronger. And so really proud of the way we bounced back this weekend and played pretty good softball. And, again, if you would have said, hey, coach, you're going to be 20-3 with the schedule you're playing when you finish that tournament season, I would have taken that and just hit the fast forward button to today if we could. But proud of the group, proud of the team, and look forward to this next phase as we get into playing just one game a day for a while.
Yeah, no doubt. And referring to that Stanford trip, for those that haven't followed along, I mean, a split with Cal, traditional powerhouse playing on the West Coast, got beat by Stanford. They have one of the best pitchers in the country, a 9-inning game. I think that's a good early season test,
Sure.
But you've also had just some tremendous success in showing the progress. I mean, the extra innings win against Clemson. I mean, Clemson has risen quickly as a power. It's a school you're going to recruit against 70 miles away. I think that's a really big home win you got earlier this year. And then avenging those losses to Florida State, the team that knocked you out last year, and you put 20 runs on them and chased one of their better pitchers. And in addition to earlier this year, when you went down to Clearwater and beat a top 20 UCLA, another traditional dynamo, and Oklahoma State, I think that was the last team that might have knocked you guys out of a World Series a couple years ago. So you've gone toe-to-toe with some of the best programs in the country, like you said. And, now you got more of the best programs in the country. I mean, there's it's kind of like college baseball where we say, the World Series is great, but the SEC is kind of just as tough. And this week, I guess we'll start, though, with Georgia Tech. It's a in-state team that's won 6 in a row. The last time they came to Athens, they beat you. I know you knocked them out last year in Atlanta, but you kept that fresh on the mind of your seniors that they beat you in their park. So what about the game against Georgia Tech, and how do you manage that knowing that you've got Alabama coming in for a really important weekend series.
Sure. Yeah, I think the message for excuse me, our team is just that if there's a competition, then we're just going to have to compete. And because everybody is bringing a different level. If there's another team in the other dugout, then let's go. We're going to have to play, and the better the competition, the more we find out about ourselves, and we'll never be the best version of ourselves without the challenge. So, we're looking forward to Georgia Tech, and hats off to them. They've changed their coaching staff. They got the same head coach, but they've changed some of the other pieces. And they're playing really good softball. So that'll be a good test for us. They've got a number of pitchers that they're kind of using the pitch by committee thing, and they've really been swinging the bats well. So we'll put all of our focus into that. And by putting our focus into playing a good game on Wednesday, that will prepare us for playing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Part of the strength of what we've got from our schedule is that we've faced everything. We faced the best up ball pitchers. We faced the best down ball pitchers. When you talk about Lexi Kilfoyle and Valerie Cagle, those are two of the best drop ball pitchers in the country, and we've faced them both and been fortunate to come out top. Nigel Kennedy at Stanford's the number one pitcher in the country. She's 70 plus with a rise ball. And so the good news is, while there are lots of really good pitchers in the SEC, they don't bring anything to the table that we haven't already seen. And so just preparing to be the best version ourselves for Wednesday will prepare us for playing a good Alabama team. And, we know what they're going to bring to the table. They just are used to winning. They play winning softball. They're well coached. So we're going to have to beat these teams. You can't just hope that they beat themselves and kind of back into it. You got to go be ready to win, and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and it's cool that Coach Baldwin, you've built a program at Georgia now where, some programs do have to manage around it, and you got to save this pitcher and, keep the team fresh for the weekend. But this Georgia team, and I don't know how many people, again, that watching this, those that follow Georgia softball know what we're talking about. But I mean, this is a national championship caliber roster that you've built with depth and experience, toughness. This is a team that's been through some wars. This is a team that's got players that have beat the number one team, Oklahoma, before. This is a team that's, been through tough times and come through slumps and gotten hot at the right time. So it's exciting to have this caliber of team out there. And I think one of the big things you did this offseason, everybody builds through the portal now, but I've noticed what you've really been effective at is getting transfers of girls that were stars in the Georgia high school ranks that may have started their career other places and brought them back. And Lily Backus, this pitcher, this North Carolina transfer, she looks like a game changer. If I'm not mistaken, she's a left-hander, and now you've gone from 2 quality starters to really 3.
For sure. Yeah, no, Georgia high school softball is outstanding. They have great coaches. We have great travel ball teams here in the state. And that doesn't mean all of them are a fit for Georgia or Georgia softball, but there are a lot of good ones out there. And so, sometimes, Lily is an example of, we watched her. She really came on late in her high school career. This was back in the time where there was early committing and you're recruiting 8th graders and 9th graders, and North Carolina made a quicker decision than we did and got her. And at the end, we're like, gosh, wish we had decided on that one a little sooner. And so when she decided she wanted to make a change, that was an easy one for us to try and get her back home. She wanted to get into the Terry School of Business, which is one of the top programs in the country, and she's just been a perfect fit. But the thing that, as we've moved forward, is when we're recruiting, is not just recruiting talented players, but consistent people, consistent thinkers. When you think consistently, it's a lot easier to behave and perform consistently. And Lily Backus is a perfect example of that. She is the same every day. She's not super outward, but she is competitive as they come inward. And she's smart, and she's just been amazing for us. And she's, she went toe to toe with Kennedy in that Stanford game. It was 1-1 into the 9th, and she pitched great. She pitched really well down in Clearwater against the best teams. So yeah, she's really given us an opportunity so that not anyone has to like carry the load. Madison Kerpick's got off to a little bit of a slow start, but is really coming on now. Well, we were able to survive that because Lily was hot. Shelby got off to a hot start and now is going through the waves of the season, but it's not as critical because Maddie's coming on and Lily's doing her thing. So it just gives us a chance to stay consistent in our performance because we've got the depth.
No doubt. That's, again, championship rotation. And, you mentioned the transfers. It was Shelby Walters last year who came from Duke, another former Georgia star. I think she might have gone to a private school in Tennessee, but she was from Georgia. So you've got girls from the region. And I think what you've done, Coach, and obviously you were a hitting coach for a long time at Georgia before you took over, but I feel like that pitching element that you've got to have to win national championships, this rotation, it's gotten better and better and better. It's pretty exciting to see. I want to ask you about keeping some of the older veteran girls. How do you keep them on edge? I mean, Sydney Kuma, Jaden Fields, these girls have played a lot of softball in their life. I mean, you're talking about 23, 24-year-old young women now, and yet they're out there knocking out of the park. How are you able to keep that razor's edge for a lot of these veteran hitters? Sarah Mosley, another one, Jaden Kearney, obviously 10 home runs. How do you keep these girls sharp this late in their careers?
Well, that's a challenge, but I think ultimately it's their inward competitiveness and just joy for softball. I think that's where we kind of start is like, hey, this is an opportunity that we get to do. We're going to go get the most out of it. And we can't allow ourselves to get too far ahead because the truth of the matter is we could have an unbelievable season. We could go undefeated the rest of the way out, and you put together 2 bad days in super regionals and the season's over. Yep. And, if that's all you focus on, then how much do you miss along the way? And so we just really try and keep them enjoying today, make practice the best part of their day, make coming to be with their teammates the best part of the day, and just keep the challenge of being the best version themselves in front of them every single day. Ultimately, that's hard enough. Forget about the opponents that you play, right? As a 18 to 22-year-old, heck, now we've got some 23, and I think we even got a 24-year-old with the COVID all stuff. But, and for them at this stage in their life with all things, NIL and, keeping their parents happy and social media and all of the different things, just being the best version of yourself each day is hard enough. So we try and keep that as the main thing. Kirby says, keep the main thing, the main thing. For us, it's just continue to fight the fight to be the best version of themselves each day. They've embraced that. They challenge themselves to grow. They give themselves some grace when it isn't their best, and we move on and try and be better tomorrow. So that's really the focus more than anything with this group.
Talking with Georgia softball coach Tony Baldwin. Tony regarded as perhaps the best hitting coach in the country. You don't like that word guru. I threw that guru word at you at the press conference last year. So no guru word today. We'll just say that you're the best hitting coach in the country. I got to ask you, there's some good things going on facilities wise. I know Josh Brooks has made a commitment to softball and baseball. What does that mean for softball? What have we seen so far, and what's ahead over there for your stadium?
Yeah, we have a $38.5 million renovation that's well underway, 28,000 square foot facility for our women. That's just, again, one of our recruits' future commitments came to the game yesterday, and her comment on social media was, it's visible the support that the University of Georgia has for women's athletics based on what you see when you're here. And I think that's an important message for all young women, is that there's an opportunity at the University of Georgia to be treated like this is the top of the line when it comes to our sport. And the truth of the matter is, while I'm thankful for my opportunities with the International and Team USA, that's probably, as you look towards the Olympics, that's the highest level of softball. But right now, until we get something better in the pro leagues and we get that sorted out, playing big time college softball is as good as it gets. And so just for young women, girls to grow up and see that, hey, you can come here and be treated first class and get to play, at the highest level is a, something that they can aspire to. And so really thankful for what we have going on. We have a great staff. I'm excited about the future recruiting. There's some really good players coming up through the pipeline here in Georgia that, we hope are getting red and black one of these days. And, so yeah, it's just a good time to be at Georgia. Our stated goal is for this to be the best place to play college softball in America. And I don't know that we're there yet or if we ever get there, but that's the goal. And it's just fun to be part of the process of making that happen.
This weekend, Alabama, 6 p.m. Friday, noon, Saturday, noon, Sunday, a couple SEC network games. We mentioned the Georgia Tech game, Wednesday night at 6. Parting shot from you, Coach, as far as what you think the next step is for your team. Again, a lot of veterans, a lot of proven players, but what's the next step you guys are trying to take right now on this journey?
Well, the next step is to have a good practice on Tuesday, right? I mean, Kirby calls it Bloody Tuesdays, and we don't necessarily refer to it as Bloody Tuesdays, but it's get to work on Tuesday to try and put the pieces back together. You go and you compete over the course of the weekend, and you play these 5 games, and it's just hard to keep it all together for that long, right? So you get a day off today, you get recovered. Tomorrow we'll go back to the basics, and we'll work on putting it back together to be ready to go after Georgia Tech. But I will say this on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we need Bulldog Nation out at the Jack this weekend. Alabama is a great team, a great program, and they traditionally travel well. And the benefit, I'll just say is at our stadium, there's no admission. So attendance, it's free admission. But that gives the other team an opportunity to show up and take advantage of it too. And so we need to have our Georgia fans there loud and proud to help support us and back our team as we, sit on this journey. We haven't shied away from the fact that our goal is, we haven't won an SEC regular season championship here since 2005. I feel like our program is much better than that. And, our team hasn't shied away from saying that we want to try and get one of those. Whether this is the year we do or not, that's what these next 24 games will tell us. But starting on Friday night, that's the goal, is to put ourselves in a position to bring one of those home. We haven't done it in a minute.
Yeah, and these girls all know, these young women all know, the last time you played Alabama in Tuscaloosa, they took 2 out of 3 from you. And these girls have long memories. I can guarantee you that. Very competitive players.
Now, the last time they played here in Athens, we took 2 out of 3 from them. So let's keep that, keep that going. And then next time we go to Tuscaloosa, we'll try and change it.
You'll be sweeping them by then, Tony, with all these great players you're getting taking over. Hey, just like football, right? Is that going to be the chant when they beat them there? All right, Coach. Hey, I really appreciate you joining us, and I look forward to watching the action this week. This team is loaded. Man, again, national championship caliber program. But like you said, it's a journey, and there's a long SEC season ahead. Starts this weekend.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having us on. Appreciate you bringing some light to our program, and hopefully we'll see Bulldog Nation out this week.
I bet you will. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Now time for our third segment of the night, and that is the hot and cold segment, brought to you by Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. Let's listen to their message right now. We'll be back right after that.
Want to make sure your family stays comfortable all year long? Our family of trained comfort specialists are available anytime to service or repair your system. Or it may be time to replace your old units with a new Trane HVAC system.
We are a locally owned family business, and we carefully select the technicians who we send into your home.
At Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, we are large enough to handle all of your HVAC and plumbing needs,
but small enough to carry.
Call today to take advantage of our 3-visit annual maintenance plan.
Welcome back to the program. Now let's take a look at who's hot, maybe not so hot. Start out with Georgia baseball, 16-1. This is the best start in the modern era for Georgia baseball, winning 16 of their first 17 games. Clearly a new direction for Wes Johnson. Now, that said, they've only played 3 Power 5 teams 2-1 in those games. Their loss this year coming to Michigan State. I went to Michigan State. Admittedly, I don't follow Michigan State baseball, so I don't really know how good Michigan State is. But they did beat Tech twice. Tech, don't really know how good Tech is yet. So we're going to find out more about Georgia baseball this week. They play Iowa Tuesday, and then they play at Kentucky, start of the SEC season this weekend. We're going to find out a lot more about the pitching on the Georgia baseball team. Now, Charlie Condon, what an amazing start for Charlie. Consensus National Freshman of the Year last year, the best right-handed hitter in college baseball. This guy already has 12 home runs in his first 17 games, 12 home runs, 25 RBIs. Just an amazing player, and certainly worth the price of admission. You're going to want to get this autograph. This guy is a future Major League Baseball player. He's amazing. Prolific size, can play anywhere in the field. So Georgia with just an outstanding player in Charlie Condon. And we'll find out more about the baseball team as the season progresses. I think it's fair to wonder about the Georgia pitching. Wes Johnson brought in to fix that, make that better. I think you have 28 first-year players at Georgia. You have 18 transfers, 10 freshmen, some guys coming back. Charlie Condon, one of the guys coming back. That is obviously a hot start, winning 16 for 17. We talked to Tony Baldwin, Georgia softball, 6-3 against top 25 teams. This is a team with only 3 losses so far. Big week for them. They've got Georgia Tech at home in a 3-game series with Alabama. This is a top 10 bona fide national championship roster on the Georgia softball team. They had just swept through the Georgia Classic, won their last 5 games in a row. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. Certainly a program headed in the right direction when we take a look at the hot and cold list. Georgia basketball. Look, Mike White can coach, but the SEC's tough. There's not much margin for error. This team's lost 10 out of 12. Now, it's the same team that won 10 games in a row earlier this season. They beat 3 ACC teams earlier this year. They beat Wake Forest at home. They beat Georgia Tech at home, won on the road against Florida State. But as the season's progressed, some things have tailed off and other teams have gotten better. I'm not a big fan of the scheduling in the league. They've lost to Auburn twice in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I really wish that the SEC could spread those games out. You want to play teams at different times of the year, so you avoid trying to getting a team that's been playing really well. Auburn closing really well under Bruce Pearl. Georgia basketball will play this week, Wednesday, in the SEC tournament against Missouri. That is a team they beat this year, and that was a big win early on. So that'll be a 9:30 game on Wednesday night. If the Dogs can win that game, they'll play Florida the next day. And just to be quite frank, that's a really tough matchup. Florida, a really long athletic team that I think matches up really well with Georgia. So modest hopes for Georgia basketball in the postseason, but you never know. We've seen stranger things happen before. So it's a little on the hot side, a little on the cold side. And of course, we're all getting warmed up for spring football and Kirby Smart, preseason #1 Dogs. Some hot news in the NFL. DeAndre Swift with a new contract with the Chicago Bears. DeAndre is going to get paid in the NFL. Big contract for DeAndre Swift as we enter into that free agency period. So congratulations to DeAndre Swift, a guy that was dynamic as a Georgia Bulldog. And now we see ETN coming in looking like maybe the next Swift figure, kind of taking it back to the top of the program. So put a wrap on it. I want to thank Tony Baldwin, the Georgia softball team, for joining us as our guest. I want to thank my producer, Kaylee Manzel, for the great production. And this week, I will be back on air with Brandon Adams on Wednesday on DawgNation Daily. Of course, you can catch Brandon every day at 10 a.m. on DawgNation Daily. On Wednesday nights, it's Jeff Santel Before the Hedges. Thursday night, Kaylee does a show with Connor Riley that you can catch here on DawgNation as well, in addition to on our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook. And you can follow me, Mike Griffith, on Twitter at Mike Griffith.